Greetings, YouTube. Now, I purchased this saw blade at a yard sale, and when I bought it, I told people I had planned on weaponizing it, and I think I've discovered how I want to do it. I have this small, one-handed bludgeoning device, which I still don't really know if it has a name, though my wife likes to call it the stick. And it occurred to me that it fits the scale I'm looking for here. So I figured that would be a useful way of holding this. Of course, I'd want to use a full-sized version, making this a two-handed weapon. The issue is, I'm going to have to split this section of the tool handle down to probably here, drilling 2 holes first, 1.5 inches apart. And if I'm not exact on this, it doesn't matter a whole lot, because this is a big hole, and I'm going to drill both holes to accommodate a 1/4 inch 20 bolt, which just perfectly fits in that hole, so it'll be nice and secure. And this one only has to, I got a whole lot more room there. So if my 2 holes are not exact, it is not going to end the world, because that is going to compensate a great deal for that distance. The advantage of this is that at some point in the future, I find a blade I like better than this, I can put it back in here. Now the problem is, I need to make a slot approximately 100,000ths of an inch thick. Your standard saw blade is far thinner than that, but it's gonna be really difficult to make 2 cuts like that. Now, I could use a circular saw blade, but I would have to come up with some purpose-built fixture that would allow me to cut it, say mount it like this, parallel and everything, and then give it support on either side so I could use a circular saw blade and then make a cut. And then I would still have to end up cutting out the little section in the center that wasn't cut. You'd end up cutting it from 2 sides, and you'd end up with a little peak in the middle, which all in all would be very difficult to produce that kind of a fixture. And you'd end up with a fixture that I could never use again for anything else, which is a huge waste of time and materials and everything for a unitasker. So I have this folding saw, which I carry in my everyday carry bag, which is a lock and this blade folds up. This is a carbide blade, and it has a thick, almost circular edge here, which is 100,000ths of an inch thick, the same thickness as that saw blade. I don't want to cut all the way through this thing down to there with this blade. That's a whole lot of distance. That's a good 6 inches. Well, actually, I don't need to go not quite all the way down, but close. So my goal here, I think, is going to be to start with this blade until I get it sunk in till it's flush. Once I get the blade in that deep, I will then maybe be able to use my reciprocating saw to continue the cut very carefully, slowly downward until I get to the point where I no longer want to cut, because I don't want to cut all the way through this, because I would then lose the plastic. So first thing I need to know, though, is how far in does this plastic go? And I don't want to muck up that one, but since this is just a one-handed bludgeoning device, I'm going to take my drill and just drill a very small hole right there in the end, which will not affect this item at all, until it tells me how thick this plastic is, and then I will come in probably 1 inch here. That may be where I drill the first hole, that right there, which is probably just part of the casting process. So that may be where I end up drilling the hole. If it's very, very close, I'll drill there anyway, because I don't want to try to drill a hole right next to it. It would be very ugly and messy. Pardon me. So that's the first thing to do, is figure out how deep this plastic is. I'm figuring the plastic probably goes to the top of that arch. Or arc. Arc or arch? I don't know. Because I guess theoretically both would be correct. That's beside the point. So that's my first goal, is take my drill out and drill a hole in there. Also to flatten this completely, so that when I go to cut it, I have nothing in the way to push the saw in one direction or other. I want this to be as flat as possible, and I'm going to use that parting line as my guide for the first cuts until I get the slice I want started with this. It's just not going to be easy, because this blade is, only half maybe even only 40% longer than the cut I want to make. So it's going to be very short strokes, which is going to be tedious as all get out. And I think the only way I'm going to be able to mount that is probably zip tie it to my porch rail and then clamp it as well, so that it is as secure as I can get it, so that it won't move. And of course I can just cut the zip ties off later. So that is my current goal, to drill a hole to figure out how deep this is, and then to drill holes in that for the 2 holes. And I'm drilling 2, of course, so that this does not rotate. I don't want this to rotate in any way, shape, or form. I want it to stay firmly in position. And the goal here is to end up with a kind of a post-apocalyptic themed axe using a saw blade and a tool handle. Now, you realize that I can drill this with a hand drill, and I think I actually, hey, why not? I may as well do that. No reason to get my power saw out for that. So that this could be done without electricity. So what I am doing here could functionally be done in a post-apocalyptic environment with saws and a hand drill, which I own. So I'll probably do that. Yeah, actually, that's not a bad idea. Just make it means that I don't have to set up the get the power drill and my extension cords and all that doohickeys, which is kind of tiresome. So this is the first stage of my construction of a post-apocalyptic saw blade axe. Alright, my assessment appears to be largely correct. The plastic seems to be about as thick as that section right there above my thumb. So yes, I'm just going to use that hole, and then I will drill another hole 1.5 inches down from there, which still puts it right nice in here. And I'll be able to get my nuts and my bolt and everything in there nice and tight and snug when I'm finished. And I may have to machine out a little bit of this plastic to get them to come in. I want to get the bolts and the nut really into that spot. So I may have to machine out some of this. But I own a Dremel tool, so you know, that's a possibility that is well within my grasp. So next up is to drill the 2 holes in that for the 2 placements in that saw blade. Whoop, that saw blade right there. Okay, sorry. That thing's very shiny. Alrighty, so we have the first hole drilled. That works in there, and I have already marked the second hole with my handy dandy awl, which I happen to love. It is so useful for marking wood and plastic. I have smoothed out this end with my chisel, and some of you may have seen me doing a sharpening video on that. And I set up the measurement with an old set of vernier calipers from Mitutoyo. This is a 4-inch set. I got this for nothing. They were going to throw it away at my company back in the 80s, so I snarfed it up. I have a 6-inch pair of Fowlers, and I have absolutely no idea what happened to them. They're somewhere. I don't know where somewhere is, however. And I drilled the first hole using my handy dandy hand drill, and I'll be doing the same with the second hole. And as you can see, this fits in there just perfect, so that means not going to need any modification at all. This side will fit, as will the nut side, and it just sticks out a little bit. And then when I'm finished, done with this, if I don't like how far it's sitting out, once I've tightened it all down so I'm satisfied with how snug it is, I will just take my angle grinder and grind it flush, so it looks a little more finished. And then this is gonna need a little work there to get that in there. I could just potentially just reef on it with a pair of one side and just use the only grind one side so it has places to go with a nut driver, and then just pull this in through the plastic, which I probably can do, or I can just hog that out with my Dremel. Either way, I will make a space for the nut in question. So next stage up, drill the second hole. Alright, in keeping in the spirit of the post-apocalypse, I have decided that I'm going to use hand tools on this thing, at least for most of it. We'll see if I could do the entire slot by hand. So I've knocked out some of this plastic with my chisel and with Mjolnir, my wonderful wooden mallet. This stuff it cuts very nicely. The hole in the notch I've pasted on the other side is smaller because that side is not going to require a socket. this is going to be big enough so I can stick a socket on this for tightening it up. It's really not sticking out that far on the other side, particularly once you get the lock washer and a nut on there. So I think I may end up just leaving it like it is. I will admit these are not perfectly in line. They started out perfectly in line, but realized I was drilling these holes blind. This one came out really nice. This one came out slightly off. Let me get that bolt out so you can see. So it's not perfectly in line. But again, the tool holes I am playing with, I do have some wiggle room on that. So as long as I get this one in, and it's nice and loose, and through the hole in the smaller of the two holes here, this hole gives me a fair amount of space to play with because it's a 5/8 of an inch in diameter, which is, you know, significantly wider than a 1/4-20. So as long as I get this one through and locked in place, this one will be more forgiving, and I can I should have no problem getting that all assembled once I'm finished. And again, we're doing a post-apocalyptic vibe, so if it isn't perfect, machined perfectly, I'm okay with that. The goal here is to make an interesting, cool weapon out of things that did not start out as weapons, essentially weaponizing ordinary everyday household items. That is my goal. And I think I may go set up in the basement, because it occurs to me that the basement doesn't have sunlight because it's sunny outside, is the coolest place in the entire building, and probably drier than my kitchen is at the moment, or the outside is, because there's a dehumidifier in the basement. So I may go sit up down there once I figure out how I'm going to block this thing to an upright I have, because there's a partial 2x4 wall. Well, the 2x4s are in place. Someone originally had planned on making my basement into compartments or something, and they never completed it. So I should be able to clamp myself to that wall without any difficulty. So next thing is going to be to clean up the mess I made on the floor before my wife sees it, and then get this set up in the basement. Greetings. So the lighting is not the best down here, so I am going to use my little pocket flashlight to illuminate what I've done here. I've got this bolted to a double set of 2x4s, which was supposed to be a doorway, which is not. At the moment it's the home spiders, lots and lots and lots of spiders. And now I'm going to try to begin to put in the slot in the top of this tool. I may do the entire thing by hand, I may not do the entire thing by hand. We will see. But next up is sawing. Alrighty, it's taking me, I think, about 15 minutes to get this saw all the way to the point where it's a full blade length in. And it is in. It is working fine. And I'll put that right there. And I can show you, one sec. Oops, sorry. Doing too many things at once. That the slot is in fact the right size. But I gotta be honest with you. I don't know if I want to keep doing this by hand, because there's a lot of cutting, man. I'm gonna have to bring this down. Yeah, at least another, let's see, how long is this? Yeah, all the way down to that. That's a long way down. So I think I'm gonna get my reciprocating saw. I apologize if that's cheating, but I've shown proof of concept that you can in fact do this by hand if you have the time to do it. I just don't want to take the time to do it. Alright folks, there we have it. Here we go, a little less light, sorry. It's not perfect. It looks great from this side. Back side doesn't look quite as nice, but we'll get upstairs and we'll finish assembling this thing. My goal down here was to get the slot made and then get that bottom pin aligned, because that's the important one. The top one, again, I have more wiggle room on the top one than I do have in the bottom one. So there you go, folks. That's what it looks like at the moment. Getting closer to completion. Well, folks, there you go. This is one fully weaponized 10-inch circular saw blade. Now, this side, a little light in there, sorry. This side looks really nice. This is the show side. This has the side with the flat heads of the bolts. The back end, however, does not look quite as good. I came through in the plastic on that side because the blade did drift while I was cutting. Apparently the blade was actually drifting when I was doing it by hand even, so I could have probably controlled it a little better, but this took me a good 45 minutes with a reciprocating saw to get it into the depth I needed, and then to open up the slot a little bit by using the reciprocating side itself is kind of like a sander, rubbing one side, the good side, down a little bit more to make the slot a little bit wider. And then I was able to then tighten up the two nuts with, there are lock washers. I think you can probably see the lock washers under there. I use stainless steel lock washers along with stainless steel materials. So this is not going anywhere. So there you have it, folks. One fully weaponized 10-inch circular saw blade. Alright. I didn't go all this trouble to make this new toy without wanting to test it. Now this is a melon. As my friend Skull pointed out in a video just yesterday, this is a bad object to test weapons on because while it may have the density of human flesh, which is essentially water, it does not have the structural integrity. A melon does not have bones or skin or skulls. However, this melon is frozen solid. So it's a whole lot closer to what a human skull is going to be like than will an unfrozen melon. So we're going to try this out and see how well I can get my axe to penetrate it. Sorry.
What's he going to kill, Jane? A melon?
Melon.
That's my mom.
Hmm?
Nothing.
Well, we give a blow, we didn't penetrate it. Try a little harder. Nope, not yet. But I did get a nice chunk out of it.
The neighbors are going to be so happy. Honey, you're absolutely showering the neighbor's yard with frozen melon bits.
It's alright. So the conclusion is that that's definitely a lethal wound, but I cannot go all the way through a frozen melon with this. However, the axe is fine, and that's definitely lethal.
Gotta let it adjust to the color.
Get one more?
It's up to you.
So, as a test of its potential lethality, I think it's a success. The melon, however, is not destroyed. That's life. Now we're going to thaw it out and see if I can eat it. Thank you.